and welcome to The Harvest with me, Carmel Fisher, where we bring you the latest in capital market news, views, and clues. If there's one thing the USA and I have in common, it's that we share the same birth month. Welcome to July, and if you are in the US and celebrate Independence Day, I do hope that you had a spectacular occasion. In this weekly roundup, we take a look at the US election and why the Fed will act when and as necessary, regardless of the election. We also take a look at the US election that gives a polluted outlook for the clean energy sector or green energy stocks. We take a look at the slowing jobs market and whether this will speed up Fed rate cuts or not. Earnings season for Q2 is coming up real soon as the big US banks report on Friday, and next week we'll see JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Citigroup up on Friday, and Goldman Sachs and Bank of America next week. The reports coming as the clouds begin to gather. We take a look at fake job ads, the bird flu, and of course, as usual, the latest developments in AI, from AI washing to the inside look at Apple's long-term AI plans. Stay tuned for more. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said on Wednesday, July 10th, that the U.S. Central Bank will make interest rate decisions when and as they are needed, pushing back on a suggestion that a September rate cut could be seen as a political act ahead of the fall presidential election. Rate cuts initially expected early this year were pushed back after inflation proved stickier than expected, with the Fed's monetary policy debate now lined up squarely with the fall campaign. Powell, over his 2 days of commentary before the Senate and House committees that oversee the central bank, indicated the Fed was edging closer to a rate cut decision, while also insisting that he was not yet ready to declare that inflation had been beaten. Here's more.
The Federal Reserve remains squarely focused on our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the benefit of the American people. Over the past 2 years, the economy has made considerable progress toward the Fed's 2% inflation goal, and labor market conditions have cooled while remaining strong. Reflecting these developments, the risks to achieving our employment and inflation goals are coming into better balance. In the labor market, a broad set of indicators suggests that conditions have returned to about where they stood on the eve of the pandemic, strong but not overheated. The committee has stated that we do not expect it will be appropriate to reduce the target range for the federal funds rate until we have gained greater confidence that inflation is moving sustainably toward 2%. We understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. Thank you.
Project 2025's plan to gut climate policy and boost fossil fuels could set back global efforts for decades. We're looking now at how a second Trump term would torpedo the environment. The next meeting of the largest annual climate conference in the world takes place in Baku, Azerbaijan, just 6 days after the US presidential election in November. And organizers of the COP29 are already bracing themselves for the election results to either strengthen or doom their efforts. It's very scary, said a climate advisor involved in the planning of COP29, who asked to remain anonymous because he's not authorized to speak on behalf of the conference, where global leaders coordinate their efforts to reduce climate-altering greenhouse gas emissions and accelerate the transition to clean energy. The Trump effect dominates all of our discussions, he said. The tightly contested election is still 5 months away, but Donald Trump is already having an impact on global efforts to combat the climate crisis, congressional action on global warming, and clean energy industry goals for 2025 and beyond.
Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every police group.
38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever, and we did.
I'm sorry, Bill, if that sounded a bit alarmist. I know that you're not given to being alarmist, but people have to understand that this is now policy. This is the kind of thing that the Heritage Foundation and conservative groups have said will happen if Donald Trump is elected. And while we may not be able to roll back climate change, they're even going to roll back the things that allow us to protect ourselves from the impacts of climate change.
I think you were being under alarmist, if anything, Ali.
Fair enough.
And to give you a sense why, look at what happened in Florida in the last 2 weeks. Governor DeSantis told the state of Florida that they can't even mention climate change in any official legislation. This at a time when Florida is living through the hottest temperatures and muggiest weather ever recorded in what's traditionally a fairly hot place already, at a time when the sea surface temperatures off the coast of Florida are higher than they've ever been, and they're staring down the barrel of what may be the worst hurricane season of all time. What Trump is going to do this time is going to be far worse than what he did last time. And last time he pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords. That's because he's got the playbook laid out, ready to go this time. And I'll tell you what the kind of final frosting on the cake is. He wants to defund the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, who are the people who maintain the thermometers that tell us how hot it is. I think in his world, if we don't know, then we won't have to talk about it.
So, what's ahead for the clean energy sector? The transition to clean energy demands financing in which investable stocks play a big part, but the renewable energy market has faced a tough slog despite tailwinds from the Inflation Reduction Act, and during the first quarter, investors redeemed renewable energy funds. One of the obvious things is going to be the US election and what happens there around the IRA and incentives for clean energy adoption. We began the year with optimism around rate cuts that hasn't really played out yet, and as a result, we've seen a dramatic bounce in many clean energy stocks. Publicly, former President Trump has said that he would repeal the IRA if elected. Earnings season is upon us. As we enter the second quarter, major US banks are preparing to report their financial results. And here's all you need to know. JP Morgan Chase, the largest US lender, is expected to report a 13% decline in earnings per share compared to the same quarter last year. This decline is due to increased investments in the company, leading to higher expenses. Keep an eye on Wells Fargo's earnings report. They are likely to face challenges related to interest payments and provisions for deteriorating loans. Citigroup is another major player to watch. Analysts predict that provisions for potential losses on commercial and industrial loans may rise, impacting their profits. Next week, we'll see earnings reports from Bank of America and Goldman Sachs. These banks will also provide insights into the overall health of the financial sector. Despite the headwinds, Wall Street divisions are benefiting from increased deal-making activity. Merger and acquisition volumes have surged globally, and equity capital market volumes are on the rise. Additionally, banks' commentary on interest income will be closely watched as market participants expect potential interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve in the coming months. And now, what do fake job ads have to do with the slowing jobs market? And will this speed up Fed rate cuts? Fake job ads are proliferating online, with more companies admitting to posting realistic-looking job openings that don't actually exist. Here's what's behind a boom in ghost jobs. 40% of companies said they have posted a fake job listing this year, according to a survey in May of 650 hiring managers from career site Resume Builder. 3 in 10 companies currently have fake listings on their sites or on job boards, according to the survey. Now, unlike job scams in which criminals seek to obtain applicants' personal information, hiring managers themselves are often behind these ghost jobs. While 7 in 10 hiring managers say they believe the practice is morally acceptable and beneficial for business, it does complicate job seekers' search for work and can also erode their trust in companies. It's not something new, but it's being taken to a whole new level from what we're seeing, said Resume Builder's chief career advisor Stacey Haller. It's very concerning, she says, and they're doing it to create a certain impression to the world and to their internal employees. But the word fake shouldn't apply anywhere in the hiring process. Hiring managers told Resume Builder their company's human resources departments, senior managers and executives, and in a few cases, investors or consultants have come up with the fake job schemes. What's the motive? Well, there are several. For running the deceptive ads, according to the survey, first, some aim to trick current employees into thinking that the business is not only growing, but also making an effort to hire more workers and alleviate the existing workloads. In some instances, hiring managers said their goal is to signal to current employees they are replaceable. Nearly 60% of companies surveyed said they collected resumes to keep them on file for a later date with no intention of immediately hiring anyone. As far as hiring managers are concerned, most say the morally dubious tactic works. Nearly 70% of them said posting fake job listings boosted revenue. 65% said the job ads had a positive impact on morale, and 77% reported an uptick in productivity among workers. The rise of these kinds of postings could explain why so many job seekers say they never heard back from recruiters after submitting their resumes. However, some companies go to great lengths to keep up the ruse, even going as far as to interview candidates for the fake jobs. So how do we spot fake job ads? While it can be hard to distinguish between real and fake listings, particularly when a company decides to go through the rigmarole of interviewing applicants, and even if a hiring manager keeps your resume on file, perhaps for reference at a later date, a post is considered fake if the company has no intention of immediately filling the role. For that reason, job posts that have been active for longer periods of time, such as months, might be disingenuous, according to Haller. If a role's salary range is overly broad, that could also indicate the company is not serious about filling the role. Now, all of this begs the question, are fake job ads inflating America's employment data? Christopher Waller, a Federal Reserve governor, says that these are purple squirrel vacancies. He said this to reporters after a speech to the Institute for Monetary and Financial Stability in Frankfurt. He insists they are not real. To Waller, such vacancies strengthen the U.S. central bank's case for tightening financial conditions. If long-term job listings are inflating the job openings figures, labor might not be as in demand as it seems. That could make it possible to reduce the number of vacancies advertised by companies without significantly altering the unemployment rate. The Fed is raising rates to tamp down on inflation, but fears persist that steep increases could paralyze the jobs market or trigger a recession. The Federal Reserve is closely watching changes in the unemployment rate and would respond if it starts a quick climb. This from Fed Governor Lisa Cook, and here's more from the governor.
My forecast is that 3- and 6-month inflation rates will continue to move lower on a bumpy path as consumers' resistance to price increases is reflected in the inflation data. I expect 12-month inflation will roughly move sideways for the rest of this year, with monthly data likely similar to the favorable readings during the second half of last year. Beyond that, I see inflation slowing more sharply next year, with housing services inflation declining to reflect the past slowing in rents on new leases, core goods inflation remaining slightly negative, and inflation in core services, excluding housing, easing over time.
Avian influenza, better known as the bird flu, has now seen an emergency declared in Colorado after a bird flu outbreak hits an egg facility. Bird flu, sometimes known as the invisible killer, has been around for over 100 years. According to the World Health Organization, the H5N1 strain was first discovered in humans in 1997. And at the time, bird flu, all of the strains, had proved fatal in 60% of human infections. As reported by Reuters on July 10th, avian influenza has public health officials on alert after unprecedented spread in dairy cows in the United States this year. 4 dairy workers have also tested positive in the country. A particularly severe variant of the H5N1 strain has been spreading around the world in animals since 2020, causing lethal outbreaks in commercial poultry and sporadic infections in other species, from alpacas to house cats. Until this year, it had never infected cows. An emergency has been declared in Colorado after the bird flu outbreak has been found at an egg facility. Prompted by Governor Jared Polis, he declared a disaster emergency on Tuesday, allowing the facility to receive state assistance. Officials say that 1.78 million chickens will have to be killed after samples submitted to Colorado State University from the producer tested positive for highly pathogenic avian influenza. The reason we are seeing higher rates of bird flu in more of the northern Colorado region is because there's a big concentration of livestock operations in that area. Although bird flu has impacted 145 dairy farms in 12 states, Colorado is leading the nation for reported HPAI outbreaks at dairy farms. Humans, too, are catching this virus, with the 4th human case reported last week, also in Colorado. Know this: if bird flu sparks a human pandemic, your past immunity could help. Older populations might be more protected than younger ones because of exposure to matched strains during childhood, but an H5N1 pandemic is likely to take a major toll all the same. And now, time for my favorite part of the show, when we discuss the latest in AI developments. First up, we look at AI washing and why this could spell trouble for the tech industry. Well, if you say you're related to a well-known celebrity, but it turns out you're only their 7th cousin, well, you aren't exactly lying, but it's fair to say you're being more than a little misleading. Now, regulators are accusing companies of trying something similar with AI. They say major tech firms and bootstrap startups alike are playing the AI card for clout, even if their product contains only the tiniest bit of generative technology or none at all. In other cases, firms might slap an already existing AI tool onto their product just so they can use the AI label. These controversial practices are known as AI washing. Well, it's a murky label indeed, and part of the problem is that no one can agree on a single definition for AI. Machines that use algorithms to pick up on statistical patterns have been around since at least the 1950s. Computer scientists might argue that those simple precursors are AI, technically. But they share little resemblance to models like OpenAI's GPT that can perform open-ended tasks and generate new content from scratch. Well, what's the harm? Companies might pay a premium for a tool they believe has state-of-the-art AI capabilities. If the product ends up under-delivering, clients can miss out on revenue, or worse, they can get inaccurate or incomplete data, leading to misinformed decisions down the line. Besides that, investors might lose trust in the AI industry, meaning that firms who do actually put AI to good use could miss out on support too. So how big is the problem? The European investment fund Open Ocean estimates that by the end of the year, 1/3 of new startups will reference AI technology in their pitch decks. While most uses are legitimate, several high-profile cases show that AI washing is a growing problem. For instance, Amazon was accused earlier this year of hiring Indian workers to operate the AI cameras at its grocery stores. I mean, seriously? What are we going to do about it, though? For its part, the SEC is stepping up its enforcement action. It recently charged 2 investment advisors with exaggerating their usage of AI in marketing materials. All the rest is left to be seen. And now for an inside look at Apple's long-term AI plans. At last month's Worldwide Developers Conference, the WWDC, Apple showed off all of the AI features coming to iOS this year. Here's an inside scoop into the company's long game. While Apple Intelligence will be free at the outset, the iPhone maker wants to eventually roll out a paid subscription for more advanced AI features like unlimited cloud services. And we already know ChatGPT is getting iOS iOS integration, but Apple is also negotiating with Alphabet and Anthropic to potentially incorporate their models into its AI offerings. Expect at least one major partnership announcement sometime this fall. Meta's Llama models, meanwhile, are no longer in the running because Apple wasn't impressed with their performance, sources told Bloomberg. Apple is working on adapting iPhone and MacBook AI features to Apple Vision Pro, the company's futuristic but pricey augmented reality headset. So, what's in it for Apple? Devices are now made of titanium and other sturdy materials, and there are more repair options than ever. That means it's no longer necessary to replace your device as soon as something goes wrong. Apple thinks AI could be the thing that finally gets people excited about upgrading to the latest model. It plans to sell about 10 million more units of the iPhone 16 compared to the previous generation. And so the question is, can you make it until September? That's when the next iteration of the iPhone is slated for release, and if you upgrade any sooner, you risk missing out on the device's new AI features, because that'll only be available on the iPhone 15 Pro and later models. And while Macs from the past 7 years can upgrade to the next version of iOS, certain features will be gated to only the latest models. And that's a great way to wrap up the weekly roundup with me, Carmel Fisher. See you next time on The Harvest. Available on Apple Music, Spotify, and anywhere you find your podcasts.